The Darksiders games have a special place in my heart. I always found them interesting because of the way they mixed different mechanics and elements of other games, and I very much enjoyed playing them despite all their flaws. While I'm far away from 100% in either game, it's not easy for a game to convince me to try to work towards it. To me, these are perfect examples that games do not need to be groundbreaking or flawless in order to be enjoyed. How about the third game though? How does it compare to the other two? Does it help solidify Darksiders as a good, memorable trilogy? Or is it a disappointing game that left much to be desired? Let's establish the story and premise first. Darksiders 3 takes place before the main story of Darksiders 1 and 2, though I'm not too sure about the exact timeline. You play as Fury, the third member of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which are tasked with serving the Charred Council in order to keep the balance of the universe. She is established to be headstrong, fearless, and quite arrogant, with no love for anything other than herself and her horse Rampage. After War has been accused of initiating the apocalypse too early and causing the extinction of humanity, Fury is summoned by the Council. While War is kept captive, she is tasked with finding and capturing the seven deadly sins, who escaped to Earth during this chaos. In return, the Council will assign her as the leader of the Horsemen. So a Watcher is tasked to accompany you, and you are sent to Earth to begin your mission. Now, before we go into the rest of the story, let's talk gameplay. At their core, the Darksiders games have always been hack and slash games, with different mechanics from different games incorporated in them. Darksiders 1 was pretty close to God of War, a linear game design where you gain new abilities slash weapons as you play the game, which modify your gameplay from that point on and allow you to access new areas. Darksiders 2 changed this by changing the design into an open world. And while you do still get new abilities and weapons, a progression system was added, along with a loot system for weapons and armor, and a movement system similar to Prince of Persia. What does Darksiders 3 bring to the series? Well, it becomes evident in your first few minutes of gameplay which game is being incorporated here. Dark Souls. Not exactly linear, but not open world either. You have different interconnecting areas, with each area containing different bonfires, serpent holes, through which you can travel to another. And by spending souls, hang on, not souls, soul lurchers, you level up and gain points which you can assign to different attributes. Though here there are only three of them, so it's a piss poor system to be honest here. Soul Lurchers are gained by defeating enemies or by using Soul Lurcher crystals or clusters. For regenerating health, you have the Nephilim's Respite, which has the same function as an Estus flask. You also have different consumables that can be used for restoring health or gaining advantage in combat. Things like reduced damage from enemies, increased strength, forms that damage enemies, etc. And when you die, you lose your soul lurchers and respawn at the last serpent hole. While in Dark Souls, the enemy who defeated you will have your souls and you'll have to kill them to get your souls back. In Darksiders 3, your soul lurchers will always be on the ground, whether you're killed by an enemy or if you have fallen off the edge at some cliff or something. For upgrading your weapons, you need to find a special material throughout the world, Adamite. The further you upgrade your weapon, the bigger the pieces of Adamite that are required. Sound familiar, all of this? Any of this? Yeah, I know. So, has Darksiders 3 basically turned into Dark Souls? No, not at all. It's still closer to its hack and slash roots than it is to Dark Souls in terms of combat. But here is where you have two options. You can play the game either in default or classic mode. The default mode, I do not know why it's called default, is very close to Dark Souls. Whenever you want to consume something, you go through this short animation which in combat will leave you vulnerable. Combos cannot be stopped. Fury will carry out the full animation before you can move or dodge. The window for getting an arcane attack, more on that later, is shorter, and I think overall enemies inflict slightly more damage. The classic mode is closer to the hack and slash style. You can stop your attacks by dodging, using consumables doesn't need an animation, and the combat is more forgiving. I think it's a nice addition to have this option. People who have played the previous games or are new can go with classic, while those who want more Dark Souls-ish combat can go for default. Perhaps it also gives more options for replaying the game as well, but you will probably go for a higher difficulty rather than going for a completely different playstyle. Now, let's go into detail about the combat itself. You have regular attacks and different combos. You will not get a gun at any point like in the other two games. Instead, you will have Salvation, a throwable blade which will return to you after hitting its targets. In combat, it's mostly useless, so I won't talk about it. The only situation where it's slightly useful is dealing with small bugs or angels, but why bother? You can simply attack them. You don't have blocking in this game either. The only method of avoiding damage is by dodging. If you time your dodge perfectly, you will get an opportunity for an arcane attack. It is basically a parry. The enemy stops their fight animation and you do more damage. Two problems here. First, there is no diversity. Like I said, dodging is the only method of avoiding damage. With some animations, if you're quick enough and you attack the enemy as soon as they start their attack animation, you will stop them. But why go for that? You 99.9% you go for a dodge, which is safer and gives you the opportunity for a parry. And then second problem, when you lock onto an enemy, Fury can only dodge in 4 directions. It's so weird. This restricts movement so much. Perhaps in a boss battle or one-on-one it's not as problematic, but in group fights this becomes a nightmare. Of course you can come out of focus as it's usually the way with big fights, but I don't understand why they had to restrict it to 4. Why not at least 6 or 8? It's only 4. Even in the one-on-one combats this can be really annoying. Now, in terms of other weapons, as you play you get 4 hollow cores. Each comes with a new weapon. The whip, your main weapon, is square. The equipped hollow weapon is triangle. You can change them together and change the equipped hollow at any time. And the different hollow weapons play differently. Some are slower and harder hitting, others are weaker but faster. With these new weapons you get different parry animations and different special attacks. These special attacks are situational and you wanna use the correct hollow for the correct scenario. The flame hollow lights you on fire and anyone who comes near you. The lightning hollow creates tornadoes that hunt down enemies. The force hollow allows you to explode, damaging and pushing away nearby enemies, and the stasis hollow allows you to slow down enemy movements. Switching between the hollows during combat and chaining them all throughout your fights with all different animations and techniques is a feast for the eyes and it's very satisfying to do. That said, remember, when I said there are combos you can perform in this game, guess what? They're all available to you from the very beginning. It's not like Dark Souls 2 where you buy/learn new combos as you play. What you have in the first second you start playing, that's exactly it until you finish the game. And the hollow weapons, same combos. You put in the same command for all of them. This is perhaps the weakest aspect of the combat. Nothing really changes as you play the game. Yes, you get new weapons, but you're still doing the same combos and still trying to get parries through perfect dodges. Situationally, some hollows are more suitable, like I said, but not to an extent to where it feels necessary. The gameplay doesn't change. You do gain Wrath and Havoc, which allow you to perform your special attacks and gain on the Havoc form, But again, these don't change either. These are the same throughout. Once or twice you use the Havoc form, it becomes, well, it doesn't become useless. It's still cool. You take this bigger form, you regenerate health, you kick ass, and you look badass. But like I said, after the second time, it loses its charm. You don't think of it as cool anymore after you've done it a few times. I mean, sure, the enemies change throughout the game, and there's a decent variety to them, and some of them have their gimmicks, but none of them stood out to me. There are these mini bosses, champions throughout some of the levels, which are welcome additions to break up the fight with the more common enemies. Also, as you play, you find enchantments, which can be appointed to each weapon, and these enchantments can further be upgraded by angelic or demonic artifacts. The different upgrades take the weapon upgrade on a different path, but once you fully upgrade the weapon, the bonuses from the other path are gained as well. So your decision on which path to go to take is not really that important. But the enchantments are useful at least. You gain health from damaging enemies, you gain wrath or havoc at an increased rate, but nothing too crazy here. Thankfully, the gameplay is more than the combat. One of the elements that the Darksiders games have taken is the puzzles from the Zelda games. You have them here too. In terms of difficulty, none of them are too difficult. Most of them fall into that area where you know what you have to do, but you need to figure out how, which is not the best when it comes to puzzles. If you see a puzzle and straight away know what you need to do, then it takes away some of the joy from solving the puzzle. But they're still enjoyable in this game, but fall short from the puzzles in the previous games. At least there is always that sound that you hear after completing a puzzle. Yes. Now, you solve the puzzles using your hollows. Yeah, they're not just for combat. Different hollow weapons have different effects. They can be used to remove obstacles, move objects, move along or up on walls, and salvation can be charged with the effect of your equipped hollow in case of targets which are out of reach. And perhaps my favorite part in all of this, how the hollows are used for moving as well. This is not just in the puzzles, but more for moving about in general as well. It's really fun seeing how the different hollows allow you to interact with the environment differently, more specifically with water. With the lightning and flame hollows, you swim as per usual, though it's a nice touch that the flame goes out with a tss when Fury goes underwater. Then with the Force Hollow, you become heavy and can walk at the bottom of the pool of water wherever you are and do combat with underwater enemies. Then the Stasis Hollow allows you to walk on water. Switching between these is very satisfying. And it's not just water either. The Flame Hollow allows you to walk through lava and do a charged double jump. And the Lightning Hollow allows you to float and you can use streams of air to move up to heights which are unreachable otherwise. The Force Hollow turns you into a like this cool looking ball of gravity or magnetism or whatever it is, and you can move along specific surfaces. And the stasis hollow allows you to do that jump thingy between two parallel surfaces that is in every game where there's a sophisticated movement system. It was a genius idea making the hollows serve all these different functions. The different areas tend to have puzzles and obstacles related to one of these hollows. In some cases, you use more. In general, it'll remain fun throughout your first playthrough. Here comes the story. Like I said, you are sent to Earth tasked with capturing the seven deadly sins. After you've captured greed and envy, you take on wrath. During the fight, Fury summons her horse Rampage, but he arrives wounded with angelic weapons. This distracts Fury, allowing Wrath to backstab you, but before he can have the final laugh, you do this like backflip on him, and then this backflip is on his face, so you shove the blade, his own blade, into his face. I mean, goddamn, that's badass. Then you are left for dead, and your horse is dead as well. However, you are saved by the Lord of Hollows. He is the one who grants you your Hollow Course. Throughout the game, he's trying to make Fury think not just about how her horse died, what's going on, and how the Seven Sins escaped, but also what is her own purpose. What does she actually want? It's a typical story, to be honest, about a hot-headed and close-minded protagonist who learns to think bigger and care not only about herself. Also, you're not fighting the deadly sins themselves, you are fighting them within yourself. Throughout the story, Fury will show signs of all the sins pretty much, and that's supposed to be part of her character arc. It's okay, but the delivery could have been better. It's really on the nose with how much they use the sins in their sentences when they talk and how Fury in the end literally spells it out. In addition to the Lord of Hollows, you also have Ulfane, a marker from the. Oh no, not a marker, that's from a different franchise. Sorry. A maker from the first game, and Jones, a human taking refuge in Haven, trying to get you to understand the situation of the humans better and to empathize with them. The whole structure of the story is nothing new. Listen, it's basically the same as Darksiders 1. You are sent to Earth with the Watcher. As you progress, you suspect a conspiracy going on, and towards the end, you get the big twist. In Darksiders 1, you find out that the Watcher and Charred Council have betrayed you and set you up. In Darksiders 3, again, you find out that the Charred Council has set you up, and the Watcher is actually Envy in disguise. Envy's plot was to use the power of the other sins to try to destroy the Charred Council. After defeating Envy and escaping the Council, you return to Earth and see that the Destroyer from the first game is carrying out one final attack to wipe out humanity for good. Because apparently now humanity has become the focus of all of these stories. So Ulfin creates a portal through which the remaining humans can pass, going to where Fury decides as she promises to help protect what's left of them. As you go through the portal and Jones is helping fight off the demons, he transforms into Strife, the fourth member of the Horsemen. It's a nice twist as it makes sense how Jones was trying to talk some sense to you. It was your brother trying to teach you a lesson and set you on the right path. Overall, it's a serviceable story, I guess, but rather than being similar to the first game, it doesn't add anything to the universe either. The additions are the Lord of Hollows, the Seven Deadly Sins, and what else? You still go to the same Earth as before, but at least the areas, visuals, and feels are different than that which were presented in the previous two games. Obviously, the Seven Sins are going to be the main bosses in this game. You encounter the first one, Envy, in like the first 5 minutes of the game, basically acting as a tutorial. Then you have Greed, Wrath, and Sloth. Nothing stood out about them, pretty mundane and boring to be honest. You meet Pride afterwards, but she considers you so much beneath her that she would allow you a confrontation only after you've proven yourself, so after you've captured the other sins. So you continue and confront Lust. The cutscene at the beginning of this fight is very cool. The other horsemen show up, kill Lust, and inform Fury of the conspiracy that is going on and that she will be their leader. But it turns out it was all an illusion created by Lust. Lust has more interesting move sets than the others. So it does boil down to, dodging and attacking as always, but I don't know, the moves themselves, her attacks, they look nice, so when you dodge them, it's more satisfying. Halfway through, Lucille, an angel you met earlier, joins the fight, but not to aid you. He's more interested in the deal that Lust is offering him rather than the one that him and Fury already made. So now you have a boss fight with two enemies, one of which is small and agile, the other is slow but hits harder. Yeah, it's Ornstein and Smaug. Jesus, some of the bosses are even taken straight out of Dark Souls 2. But the twist here is that you have the option of killing Usil and then Lost, or killing Lost first, sparing Usil. So at least in some way it's different. Now, here we step up our game a bit. The next boss is Gluttony, and even before you fight him, visually he really captures the eyes. He's taken the form of a kraken from all the eating, and his original body is located only at the end of one of his tentacles. Even Fury acknowledges how he's changed so much she barely recognized him at the beginning. The fight consists of two parts. At first, you fight the original body. Two things that stand out here. Gluttony at various points spits acid around the arena, and this can go on for a while. And the acid pools stay. They're not gonna disappear. So your available space becomes smaller and smaller the more the fight goes on. Second, obviously the best way to damage him is to get up close, but he has an attack where he sucks you off, sucks you in and does a shit ton of damage to you. The animation before this attack is short, so you gotta be paying attention. All this makes the fight intense and adds a welcome level of difficulty. The second part of the fight, you're in water against the full Kraken body. This part is a bit more boring. You basically gotta attack the attacks. You basically gotta avoid the attacks as usual. There are these mines floating about that follow you if you get too close. So the key is to wait for the sucking attack, and then guide the mines into the mouth of the Kraken. Do that 2-3 times. The fight is over. A satisfying fight overall. Next up is your rematch with Raph. This fight is much better. In his first phases, he has a lot of the same movesets as the first fight, but once he drops below half health, he summons angels and demons into the area. As he kills them, he gains back health, so you gotta maximize your damage output to overcome this. So you gotta think of which consumables and you're going to use and which weapon you are going to use. Once you defeat him, he goes into his second phase. He buffs up, gets some new attacks, but that's it. Nothing amazing, but at least it was better than the first fight. Now that you've captured 6 of the sins, it's time to fight Pride. Her fight also consists of 2 phases. In phase 1, she's constantly protected by this aura, which you gotta break by damaging it to be able to hit Pride. In the second stage, this statue head comes down and emits a beam across the area, so you gotta keep fighting Pride, who has some new attacks by the way, while looking out for the beam as it does a lot of damage. This one was one of the better fights in the game. And at last you have the True Envy. Again, 2 phases. The first phase is pretty standard in that there's no special mechanics, but her attacks are fast and they do a lot of damage, so you gotta be careful. And in the second phase, in addition to some new moves, she starts summoning the other sins. As they are summoned, they do one attack and then they disappear. But considering that enemy can attack you while the other sin is doing the same, it can be a tricky situation. Overall, a decent final boss. Oh, I almost forgot. There's this side story between the Lord Apollos and a demon called Abraxas. I'm not going to go into the details. You'll basically have the option of to kill one of them. Abraxas is a fast-paced one-on-one fight, while the Lord of Hollows is the type of boss that summons minions. Both okay fights. I just wanted to mention them. Okay, let's start wrapping this up. Visuals. This is a pretty game. It still has some of that artsy look that the previous games had. Granted, not all the locations stand out. You have a lot of underground tunnels, dungeons, building and streets, pretty usual stuff. But there were 2 locations specifically that stood out to me: Haven and the Depths. These 2 were very beautiful. They stood out. I remember them. Other than this, Like I said, the other areas were standard, but overall a very pretty game. Last but definitely fucking not necessarily not the least, we have the performance. My god, after 3 years, the frame rates are still not that good. I've seen footage of the gameplay on Xbox and it's so smooth compared to the PS4. Yeah, the lighting and sharpness are better on the PS4, but when you have a gameplay centered around precise and exact movements, you cannot have frame rate drops. And this became worse in this area called the Scars. My god! It was so annoying going through here because this area is full of tough enemies and movements which require good timing. The performance really brings this game down on the PS4. It's the worst thing about the game, perhaps. Overall, in conclusion, I think Darksiders 3 is still a good game. Quite a few flaws, mind you, but overall a good package. If you're looking at it as the final game in the trilogy, a bit disappointing, I'll be honest. I played through the game twice 2 years ago and then 1.5 times again recently. Did I have fun overall? Mostly, yes. Mostly. Will I ever want to play it again? Very, very unlikely. If it's at a if it's at a reduced price, I think it's worth giving it a go. At full price, probably not, unless you're a die-hard fan of the series.